40 million people depend on the Colorado River. It irrigates 5.5 million acres across 7 states, while Mexico receives enough for another 2.3 million people and 500,000 acres. Falling reservoirs are not the river's only threat. As flows shrink, an invisible burden becomes more concentrated in every remaining drop: salt. The deeper paradox is that some measures designed to save water can leave less water available to dilute or flush that salt away. Long before the river physically disappears, this rising salt tax can make its water increasingly expensive to use. The river begins in the Rocky Mountains with roughly 50 milligrams of dissolved minerals per liter. At Imperial Dam near Mexico, the concentration exceeds 800 milligrams, while nearly 10 million tons of salt travel downstream each year. About 62% comes from natural geology, and much of the rest comes from human activity, mainly irrigation. Beneath western Colorado and eastern Utah, the late Cretaceous Mancos Shale runs 3,000 to 5,000 feet thick and holds salts left by ancient seas. Irrigation above it sends unused water underground, where it dissolves those minerals before returning to the river. Colorado's Grand Valley shows the result. Water delivered to farms averaged 500 milligrams per liter, but drainage from the same fields averaged 4,200, leaching almost 30 tons of salt per hectare each year. River flow determines how concentrated that load becomes. From 2000 through 2008, Lee's Ferry recorded the lowest 9-year average natural flow in the measurement record. Salt loading does not fall in direct proportion to snowmelt, so less water can carry a more concentrated chemical burden downstream. That burden already causes a modeled $383 million in annual damage across the United States basin. Without continued mitigation, the figure could exceed $1.5 billion. Each additional milligram per liter represents roughly 10,000 tons of salt per year, and about $1.733 million in recurring economic damage. Farmers pay first. Saline water creates osmotic stress, making roots struggle to draw moisture even from wet soil. Sodium and chloride disrupt nutrients such as potassium and calcium, while sodium collapses soil pores until productive ground becomes hardpan. Lower basin farmers must apply roughly 20% more water than crops require simply to push salt below the root zone. This leaching requirement protects yields, but produces saline drainage that needs expensive underground tile networks. Skip the water and salt accumulates. Apply it and the farm needs more water, drainage, and capital just to preserve the same soil. That is the salt tax at field level. High-value crops have almost no room for error. Lettuce has a threshold of 1.3 decisiemens per meter, and each unit above it cuts yield by 13%. Imperial Valley vegetables and melons occupy 20% of harvested acreage, but generate more than 41% of agricultural value at $9,600 per acre. Salt-tolerant field crops cover 68% of the land and average only $1,400 per acre. If winter vegetables become unviable, farms do not merely change crops, they move into a much lower value economy. Yuma, Arizona concentrates that risk. Its agriculture produces $1,581 per acre-foot of water and uses only 8% of the basin's irrigation supply, yet generates 18% of total crop sales. Average net farm income approaches $600,000. That output depends on salt-sensitive leafy greens already close to their biological limit. A small chemical change can destroy far more value than its water volume suggests. And here is the conservation paradox. Drip irrigation saves water, but removes excess flow that once washed salts below the root zone. More than 70% of production sites using high-efficiency systems show a net rise in soil salinity during the crop cycle. Lining the All-American Canal also stopped 60% of annual recharge to the Mexicali aquifer. The estimated consequences threaten more than 1,000 families and 33,000 acres of farmland, with damages near $80 million per year. Saving water and managing salt are related, but they are not the same job. Cities and industries pay another version of the tax. Saline water corrodes heaters, dishwashers, plumbing, and utility networks serving tens of millions of households in Southern California, Las Vegas, and Central Arizona. Cooling towers and boilers require millions of dollars in chemical treatment to control scaling. Utilities may need large reverse osmosis systems to meet drinking water needs. Southern California alone has an annual salt imbalance of 600,000 tons, meaning more salt enters than leaves. Since 1974, the federal government has spent over $1 billion on basin salinity control, preventing more than 1.33 million tons from entering the river each year. One major defense was the Paradox Valley unit in southwestern Colorado, where the Dolores River crosses a collapsed prehistoric salt dome. Brine historically added 205,000 tons annually. Shallow wells intercepted it, then injected it 14,000 feet underground. The unit removed roughly 100,000 tons per year, nearly 10% of the basin's entire control effort. That solution created a new risk. In March 2019, a magnitude 4.6 earthquake struck near the injection well after deep disposal produced induced seismicity concerns. Reclamation's final environmental impact statement named no action as the preferred alternative, a decision the basin states fought. Without a replacement, permanent shutdown could raise salinity at Hoover Dam by 9 to 10 milligrams per liter during average hydrology, and add $24 million in annual damages. Controlling salt had produced its own infrastructure trap. The salt tax also crosses the border. The 1944 Water Treaty guaranteed Mexico 1.5 million acre-feet each year, but said nothing about quality. In 1961, Arizona's Welton-Mohawk district began pumping ancient groundwater containing 2,500 to 18,000 parts per million into the Gila River. Crops in Mexico's Mexicali Valley withered, and soils became toxic. After a decade of pressure, including threats to approach the International Court of Justice, Minute 242 was signed in 1973. It bound the United States to deliver water no more than 115 parts per million above salinity at Imperial Dam. The United States spent $250 million building the Yuma desalting plant to meet that obligation, but the facility has barely operated. A full year costs $23 million to $29 million and produces water at $305 to $786 per acre-foot. Meanwhile, untreated bypass water created the 15,000-acre Cienega de Santa Clara, now critical habitat for the endangered Yuma clapper rail. Running the plant threatens the flows sustaining that ecosystem. Agricultural fallowing can achieve the same treaty compliance for $60 to $250 per acre-foot, while keeping the wetland alive. The Colorado River is no longer only a water supply. It is a financial system linking farms, household infrastructure, federal projects, and an international treaty. Every attempt to conserve water must also account for the salt that conservation leaves behind. The river's economic utility can erode long before its final physical drop disappears.